The battle for Willow Creek. The morning mist clung to the hills of Willow Creek, Colorado, like a secret too heavy to lift. Ellen Harper stood on the porch of her father's old cabin, a sander buzzing in her hand as she smoothed a weathered rail. The air smelled of pine and coffee, and the quiet was the kind that made you feel the world might just leave you alone for a day. But then she heard it, a low, mechanical hum slicing through the stillness. She squinted into the sun, and there it was, a drone, sleek and smug, hovering above her like a digital hawk. Its camera blinked, as if daring her to react. Ellen didn't flinch. On a Sunday, she muttered, setting the sander down. She knew exactly who'd sent it. The Willow Creek Homeowners Association, or the Homeowners Overbearing Alliance, as locals had taken to calling them, had been after her father's cabin since he passed 5 years ago. They claimed it broke every rule in their book, from the angle of the roof to the non-compliant wildflowers in the yard. Ellen didn't need a law degree to know what they really wanted. Her land, cleared and packaged for some developer's dream resort. 10 minutes later, the convoy arrived. 7 black SUVs rolled up the gravel road, their HOA logos gleaming like badges of self-righteous authority. They fanned out in front of the cabin with choreographed precision, kicking up dust that settled like a challenge. Out stepped Victor Grayson, a man who looked like he'd been born to ruin picnics. His navy blazer was too crisp for a dirt road, his smile too polished for honesty. He flipped open a leather folder with the flair of a game show host revealing a prize nobody wanted. MS. Harper, he called, voice dripping with fake regret. We're here to address multiple violations that, unfortunately, require your immediate removal from this property. Ellen crossed her arms, her jaw tight. You brought a whole convoy for that. What? You think I've got a tank hidden in the shed? Victor didn't blink. You've ignored our notices, violated code 12-4C, and refused mediation. As of this morning, you're officially evicted. She stared at him, calculating how to tell him off without giving him the satisfaction of a scene. But before she could, a rumble echoed from down the hill. Engines. 1, then 2, then a dozen. Ellen's heart lifted. She'd forgotten in the chaos of legal threats that today wasn't just another day. It was the annual Harper family cookout, held every year to honor her father's birthday. Invitations weren't needed. Harper's had a knack for showing up when trouble brewed. First to appear was her cousin Nate, his beat-up Ford pickup rattling like it was held together by spite and duct tape. Behind him came Uncle Ray's Jeep, caked in mud and sprouting antennas like a conspiracy theorist's dream. Aunt Clara's van followed, plastered with protest signs from her latest cause. A parade of vehicles, hot rods, trailers, and one that looked like a hearse crossed with a food truck, swarmed the yard. Victor turned, his frown deepening, as if someone had just spilled ketchup on his yacht. "What is this?" he demanded. Ellen grinned. "Family." The Harper clan spilled out, a mix of tattoos, flannel, and unapologetic swagger. Nate climbed onto the porch, handing Ellen a mason jar of lemonade like they were gearing up for a siege. "Didn't know the HOA was playing Secret Service today," he said, eyeing the SUVs. Clara waved a bowl of potato salad. "Brought food, and a lawyer." Victor's eyes narrowed. "A lawyer?" Ellen nodded toward her cousin Diane, who was unloading a tray of deviled eggs while wearing flip-flops and a Yale law sweatshirt. "Passed the bar in 3 states. She's feisty." As if on cue, a goat named Rusty trotted out from behind the cabin, sporting a kid-sized tactical vest. He paused, locked eyes with Victor's lawyer, a twitchy man in a cheap suit, and charged. The lawyer yelped as Rusty chomped his briefcase, spitting out a chunk of leather. Ellen sipped her lemonade, unfazed. Victor's composure cracked. "You can't intimidate us with animals and theatrics." "This ain't theatrics," Ellen said, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. "This is Sunday at the Harper place. And you just parked your fancy convoy in the middle of storm." Behind her, someone fired up a grill. A truck blared bluegrass with a rebellious edge. The wind carried the scent of mesquite and defiance. Victor's team shifted nervously. One HOA member tripped over a lawn chair and vanished into the grass. Ellen leaned forward. Turn around and leave, while your tires still work. Victor hesitated, then snapped his folder shut. This isn't over, Ms. Harper. The convoy reversed, slinking away like a scolded dog. Ellen watched them go, knowing this was just the first shot in a war she hadn't asked for. But the Harpers were ready. The next morning, the HOA struck back. Victor filed a complaint against Rusty for assault and property damage, claiming the goat's briefcase bite cost $200. Rusty, unbothered, spent the day headbutting a tire swing and munching the neighbor's roses. Ellen wasn't surprised. Victor was the type to sue a cloud for raining on his parade. By noon, a team of HOA enforcers marched up with clipboards and high-visibility vests, issuing 12 new violations: excessive porch decor, unauthorized flagpole, and, Ellen's favorite, non-compliant lawn hue. She took the papers with the calm of someone skinning a fish, quick, cold, and practiced. The violations were nonsense. One claimed her windshield, hung by her dad in '89, was a visual obstruction. Another said her grass was too green. Ellen might have laughed if she didn't know the game. This was about burying her in paper until she broke. But the Harpers had their own playbook. Aunt Clara spent the afternoon baking what she called diplomatic brownies, the smell alone making Rusty nap harder than usual. Ellen didn't ask for the recipe. They took the brownies to the HOA's community mixer, a beige hall lit by flickering fluorescents and passive-aggressive signs about coasters. Victor and his board huddled by the punch bowl, whispering like they'd caught Ellen stealing their silverware. She set the brownies down with a smile sweet enough to rot teeth. "Just being neighborly," she said. Victor sneered. "Trying to bribe us?" "Could have brought Rusty instead," she replied. One by one, the board took brownies, either out of politeness or fear. Victor nibbled half and passed the rest to his assistant, who bolted to the bathroom and didn't return. Within 15 minutes, the mixer unraveled. A young board member stood up, declaring the HOA should become a pottery collective. Another sobbed about her dream to fly helicopters. Two seniors started an interpretive dance, claiming it was their Ibiza summer reborn. Victor tried to restore order, but his lawyer launched into a rant about sidewalks being tyranny. Ellen and Clara slipped out before someone grabbed a ukulele. By evening, the town was buzzing. Nate's teenage son, Tyler, had reprogrammed a drone to spy on the HOA's drones, capturing Victor's panic as he was roped into a gratitude circle. The clip went viral, his grimace now a meme. Ellen didn't celebrate. She knew the HOA would hit harder. Sure enough, the next day, a 14-foot fence appeared along her road, lined with security guards and legal notices. It was illegal, blocking public access, but Victor had pulled strings for an emergency permit. Ellen considered applying for a recreational catapult permit in response. That night, the family gathered around a fire pit, roasting hot dogs and scheming. Uncle Ray, fingers greasy with some dubious gel, suggested jamming the HOA's drones. "We already jammed their mixer," Nate quipped. Diane, buried in law books, found a gem: a town bylaw protecting structures over 75 years old with historical use. Clara perked up. "Your dad used to talk about your grandpa hiding moonshine under the barn during Prohibition. Called this place the Stash House." Ellen blinked. "That was real." "As real as my chili," Clara said. They tore into the barn, prying up floorboards until they found trapdoor. Beneath it, in a brick-lined chamber, sat empty glass bottles, a rusted still, and a tin sign. Harper Spirits, 1921. It was proof. By dawn, Diane filed for historical preservation status, freezing Victor's eviction orders. When Victor got the news, he reportedly hurled a stapler at a plant. The town clerk was still chuckling about it hours later. Ellen felt the tide turning, but she knew the fight was far from over. The sun hadn't fully cleared the hills when Ellen stepped out to the tool shed behind the cabin. She wasn't hunting for a weapon, not exactly, but the weight of the HOA's latest moves had her itching for something solid to hold on to, something that wasn't a stack of legal papers or Nate's latest plan to arm Rusty the goat with a laser pointer. Her boots crunched through the dew-soaked grass, and the shed door creaked as she stepped into the familiar smell of oil, cedar, and her father's memory. The walls were lined with tools older than she was, each one a quiet testament to a man who'd fixed more than fences in Willow Creek. Between two fishing rods, she spotted a dusty green tackle box, untouched for years. Something about it pulled at her. She sat on the workbench, popped the lid, and found not lures or hooks, but a bundle of letters tied with yellowed twine. Her father's handwriting looped across the top page, dated a week before he died. If you're reading this, you've stepped into a pile of HOA nonsense. Knew it'd happen eventually. Ellen laughed, a sharp sound that caught in her throat. The words carried his voice, gruff, clever, the kind of man who'd outsmart a coyote with a coffee and a wink. The letters were part diary, part battle plan. He'd predicted the HOA's push to snatch the land, especially after whispers of resort developers circling Willow Creek. Any group that fusses over my mailbox color while eyeing my water rights can kiss my entire flagpole, he wrote. He knew Ellen would be the one to fight, whether she wanted to or not. You don't pick your battles, he said, but you pick how you swing. She read until the light shifted, then tucked the letters back, her resolve hardening. This wasn't just about the cabin anymore. It was about her dad's stubborn, honorable way of life. Back at the house, the porch was a hive of activity. Nate was rigging a wind-powered radio antenna in case the feds jam our signals, while Clara organized a protest-themed bake sale. Tyler, the teenage tech whiz, was coding a website called HOA Havoc, featuring Victor's face photoshopped onto cartoon villains. Grandma Ruth, who'd found an old megaphone, was yelling at a squirrel she swore was one of Victor's spies. Diane, as always, was buried in legal books at the dining table. Ellen slid the letters across to her. Diane scanned the top page and whistled. This is gold. He laid it all out. Timelines, weak spots, even which council member loves pecan pie. Enough to win? Ellen asked. More than that, Diane said, tapping her pen. There's a 1974 town charter amendment here. If it's real, the HOA might not even have jurisdiction over your land. It's grandfathered into the original township zone. They needed proof, old records, not Google. That meant Old Man Carver, the town historian and former taxidermist, who lived in a trailer stuffed with filing cabinets and jars labeled things like Willow Creek Grit, 1979. He refused to digitize, claiming computers were ghost traps. If anyone had the original town maps, it was him. Ellen, Nate, and Rusty trekked to his property after lunch. The yard was a maze of booby-trapped gnomes and rusted bikes, the trailer half swallowed by a pine. Carver greeted them in a bathrobe and cowboy boots, holding a mug that read, History Bites. After bartering some beef jerky and a promise not to snitch about his VHS collection of infomercials, Carver led them to his storage bunker, a shipping container cooled by fans and paranoia. 20 minutes later, they found it, a 1936 map, stamped by the Township Council, marking the Harper property as a sovereign family parcel. The term was rare, implying ownership beyond municipal control. Back at the cabin, the family pored over the map like pirates over treasure. Diane confirmed the term predated Willow Creek's incorporation. If they could get it recognized in court, or better by the town council, the HOA's case would collapse. But there was a hitch. The council had 3 HOA-friendly members, including Councilwoman Vera Holt, who once blocked a park renovation because she thought swings were too whimsical. Ellen hatched a plan. They'd storm the next council meeting, not just showing up but flooding it with townsfolk armed with facts, maps, and Clara's cookies. Grandma Ruth volunteered as security. I've got mace and a stare that'll curdle cream, she said. No one argued. The night of the meeting, the town hall was packed to the rafters. People lined the walls, murmuring like a storm about to break. Ellen stood near the front, the map under her arm, her father's letters in hand, Rusty leashed beside her for moral support, or chaos, depending on the moment. Victor sat at the witness table, smug as ever, his fresh shave doing little to hide his unease. The council chair called Ellen's name. She stepped up, unrolled the map, and read her father's words aloud. If they come for this land, tell them it was carved from grit and blood, built before their rules, and guarded by a family too stubborn to fold. The room roared. Even Vera Holt cracked a smile. Victor tried to object, citing zoning laws and developer rights, but Diane was ready. She slapped down ordinances, legal precedents, and a zinger. If this land isn't sovereign, neither's the town square. Want the HOA picking your curtains next? The council chair leaned forward. We'll need to review, but you've made a hell of a case. By morning, Willow Creek was a battlefield of barbecues and rebellion. Protest signs sprouted like weeds. Victor Grayson Hates Peach Cobbler was a hit, especially after the mayor's wife shared it online. The church marquee read, "Thou shalt not steal thy neighbor's land, HOA." Tyler's drone jammer, cobbled from radios and a toaster, buzzed steadily, grounding one of Victor's drones in a tree. When an HOA rep came to retrieve it, Rusty chased him off, leaving a clipboard in the dust. The town was picking sides. It started small, a bag of tomatoes left on Ellen's porch with a note, "For strength." A librarian offering to proofread Diane's briefs. The mechanic refusing to fix the HOA's SUVs. Then it grew. Folks set up chairs on Ellen's lawn like it was a tailgate party. Someone brought a popcorn machine, another a bounce house. What began as a land dispute was now a movement, with the Harpers at its heart. Victor fought back with Operation Reclamation. Late-night flyers warned of anarchists ruining property values. Ellen read one at dinner, sparking laughter so loud Ray choked on his chili. Then came Guardian Horizon, a private security firm that looked like a discount SWAT team. They patrolled in HOA-patched vests, glaring at anyone in a Harper family t-shirt. Ellen sensed a bigger move coming. She wasn't wrong. On Friday, the HOA set up an information center 2 lots from the cabin, a tent with banners, brochures, and a creepy cardboard cutout of Victor giving a thumbs up. They handed out cookies and fear-mongering pamphlets about goat-fueled chaos. Clara and Tyler countered with a stand offering real food, crafts, and a goat-petting booth starring Rusty in a bow tie. The crowd flocked to them, and by noon, #GoatGuardians was trending. But the pressure was wearing on the family. Nate and Clara bickered over whether to dig a moat or crowdfund online. Grandma Ruth nearly brained a mailman, mistaking him for an HOA scout. Ellen's sleep was fitful, her nerves frayed. They needed a break, something solid. That night, as they ate chili under string lights, Tyler approached with a tablet, grinning like he'd won the lottery. "Check this," he said, pulling up drone footage. "There's not the HOAs." It showed Victor's guards hauling boxes into a storage unit behind HOA headquarters. Diane gasped. "That's evidence storage. Financial records, not just papers." Ellen leaned in. "He's hiding something?" Tyler's grin widened. "He's hiding everything." They planned a risky move, not quite legal but necessary. Diane confirmed that proof of Victor's financial misconduct could void his filings. On Saturday, while the town was distracted by a cornhole tournament on Ellen's lawn, she, Tyler, and Nate slipped to the storage facility. Tyler faked a work order badge. Nate brought bolt cutters, and Ellen distracted the guard by pretending to be a tourist looking for a haunted escape room. Inside, Tyler hacked the keypad, and they found boxes labeled budget, developer deals, and do not open. They opened them. The documents were a goldmine. Victor had funneled HOA funds to a shell company buying land around Ellen's property. He wasn't just enforcing rules. He was the investor behind a luxury resort plan that would raise the cabin for a golf course. Ellen's jaw tightened. "This isn't just about my land. He's after the whole town." They photographed everything, left no trace, and leaked the files to the Willow Creek Gazette. The editor, who loathed Victor's newsletters, ran the story with glee. HOA scandal rocks town. News crews from Denver rolled in, setting up beside lemonade stands. Ellen became a local hero, her cabin a mix of protest camp and county fair. Victor's press conference flopped. Protesters drowned him out. Someone spiked his hair gel with glitter, and Rusty nibbled his pants on live TV. His name trended for all the wrong reasons. But Ellen stayed focused. Victor still had money, lawyers, and a court date. The HOA wasn't done, and neither was she. The Willow Creek Courthouse wasn't built for spectacle. A squat, beige box tucked between a post office and a diner that slung hash browns and side-eye in equal measure. It usually handled petty disputes, fence lines, stray dogs, or the time misses. Larson's Metallica Marathon sparked a noise complaint from the church. But today it was a circus. The courtroom was so packed that Judge Harold Tate, dragged out of semi-retirement, opened the back doors to let the overflow crowd spill into the hallway. Reporters perched on railings, old-timers sipped sweet tea from thermoses, and someone in the parking lot hawked T-shirts reading, "I survived the HOA trial." Ellen Harper sat at the defense table, flanked by Diane on her left and Nate on her right. Rusty the Goat was outside with Grandma Ruth, who'd been barred after threatening to hogtie Victor's lawyer with a rosary. Across the aisle, Victor Grayson looked like a man who'd just realized his poker bluff was about to cost him his shirt. His Denver attorney, a wiry guy with a tie sharper than his wit, whispered frantically, but Victor waved him off. Ellen's pulse thumped like a war drum, but she kept her face steady. She was her father's daughter, and this land was in her blood. Victor's team went first, unloading a barrage of legal jargon and flashy visuals. They projected maps highlighting the cabin's violations, cited obscure bylaws, and rolled out spreadsheets tracking Ellen's supposed infractions. At one point, they wheeled in a scale model of Willow Creek, complete with tiny SUVs and a creepily accurate Mini Rusty. It was a slick performance, but it felt hollow, like a car salesman pitching a lemon. The crowd shifted unimpressed. Then Diane stood, her Yale sweatshirt peeking out under a blazer like a badge of defiance. She moved like a boxer stepping into the ring, clicking through slides that laid bare Victor's sins. The storage unit documents, proof of his shell companies, siphoned HOA funds, and developer deals, flashed on the screen. Each click was a gut punch. Victor objected, calling the evidence stolen, irrelevant, and forged. Judge Tate shut him down, noting the documents were already front-page news across Colorado. The crowd murmured, sensing blood in the water. But the real game-changer came when Diane called her surprise witness, Victor's ex-wife, Laura Grayson. The room gasped as Laura strode in, her suit sharp, her lipstick red, her eyes like a hawk spotting lunch. She took the stand with a relish that made Victor sweat through his blazer. Laura didn't just testify, she unloaded. She detailed years of financial manipulation, confirmed Victor's shell company was used to hide assets during their divorce, and tied him to the resort developers. The kicker? Victor had been banned from fiduciary roles after a Nevada fraud case. The courtroom exploded. Judge Tate's gavel slipped from his hand, not to quiet the chaos, but because he was stunned. Reporters scrambled to tweet updates. Victor tried to spin, but his voice drowned in the uproar. Laura left to a standing ovation, her heels clicking like victory. Victor's lawyer tried to pivot, arguing the HOA's rules were still valid despite Victor's personal errors. It was like mopping the floor during a hurricane. The crowd wasn't buying it, and neither was Judge Tate, who looked like he'd rather be fishing. Then it was Ellen's turn. She stood, heart pounding, and faced a room without slides or props. Just her, the truth, and a room full of people who'd known her dad. She spoke of the cabin's history, her father's life as sheriff, protecting Willow Creek from its own worst impulses. She read from his letter. This land was built before their bylaws, guarded by folks too ornery to quit. She didn't shout, but her voice carried. "I'm not fighting because I hate rules," she said. "I'm fighting because someone decided their greed matters more than our roots. When they win, we forget what it means to belong." The room went still, not from boredom, but from the weight of her words. Even Vera Holt, the stone-faced councilwoman, nodded slightly. Judge Tate called a recess. An hour later, he returned, peering over his glasses like a man who'd seen too many small-town feuds. The verdict came fast and clear. Ellen Harper won. The HOA had overreached. The cease and desist order was void. The cabin was declared a historical site under state law. Victor was removed as HOA president, fined for fraud, and handed over for a reactivated investigation. The HOA itself was suspended pending a full audit. The courtroom erupted. Someone yelled, "Justice!" Nate high-fived half the front row. Tyler live-streamed Grandma Ruth doing a jig in the parking lot. Victor slumped, his empire crumbling like a bad souffle. As deputies escorted him out for questioning, he paused near Ellen. "You think this is a win?" he hissed. "No," she said, eyes steady. "I kept what's mine." Rusty greeted Victor outside with a gleeful bleat and a nip at his briefcase. The courthouse steps became a festival. A band showed up, uninvited but welcome. Grills fired up. Cider flowed. Ellen watched it unfold, the weight of months lifting. She hadn't just saved the cabin. She'd reminded Willow Creek what community meant. The celebration spilled into the next day. Protest signs gave way to party banners. The church marquee now read, "Love thy neighbor, not their rulebook." Former HOA members slunk over, offering quiet apologies. Ellen handed them plates of baked beans, not grudge. Willow Creek was too small for bad blood when everyone shopped at the same hardware store. She'd expected to crash from exhaustion, but instead, she felt alive, lighter than she had in years. Her father's legacy wasn't just the cabin. It was the fight, the family, the town that rallied. But the win wasn't clean. Victor's fraud probe was ongoing, and whispers of his developer pals lingered. Ellen knew the resort plan might resurface, wearing a new face. She walked the cabin's porch, wind chimes singing, and found a package at the door, an old box, misrouted by the post office for years. Inside was a letter from her dad, one she'd never seen. "If you're reading this, you're still standing. I knew you'd fight, and I knew you'd win. Not clean, but right. That's what we do, Ellie. Protect the land, the people, the stories. Don't let him pave it over." She sat on the porch swing, the letter in her lap, Rusty's head on her knee. Fireflies blinked across the lawn. Grandma Ruth was arm wrestling a teenager by the bonfire. A shadow moved beside her. Mark, the reporter who'd been around, scribbling notes and snapping photos that made Willow Creek look like a legend. He offered her a mug of chamomile tea. "Trying to charm me with herbs?" she teased. "Just saying thanks," he said, smiling. They talked until the fire died, about the trial, the town, and maybe something more. He asked to write a book, not just the legal battle, but the Harpers, the spirit of the fight. "Make it messy," she said. "It wasn't tidy." "Messy's honest," he replied. The town settled into a new rhythm. Diane opened a law office in an old feed store, decorating it with trial headlines and a photo of her mid-objection, fierce as a lion. Tyler's YouTube channel on drone defense hit 1 million views. Nate's construction business boomed, thanks to his new fame as the GOAT guy. Clara joined a knitting group that hid protest slogans and scarves. Ellen painted the porch swing, sorted her dad's letters, and dipped her feet in the creek, letting the cold water ground her. The mayor offered her a council seat, hinting at a future run for mayor. She said she'd think about it, and she meant it. But for now, she needed the quiet. Willow Creek was safe, the cabin stood proud, and Rusty wore a paper crown someone had taped to his head. The fight had changed her, but it had also changed the town. They weren't just neighbors anymore. They were a force. The sun rose over Willow Creek like a promise kept, painting the hills gold and casting long shadows across Ellen Harper's cabin. The porch swing creaked under her weight as she sipped coffee, the steam curling into the crisp morning air. Rusty the goat lounged nearby, his paper crown slightly askew, chewing on a stray weed with the contentment of a local hero. The town was still buzzing from the trial, but the frenetic energy of the past weeks had softened into something warmer, like a fire settling into embers. Willow Creek wasn't just recovering, it was redefining itself. Ellen walked the property, her boots sinking into the damp earth. The protest signs were gone, replaced by wildflowers that had somehow survived the chaos. The wind chimes her father hung in '89 sang a familiar tune, and the cabin's weathered beams seemed to stand a little taller, as if they knew they'd won. She paused by the barn, with a trapdoor to the old moonshine stash still lay open, a reminder of the history that had saved her. Her father's letters, now neatly stacked in a cedar box inside, were her anchor. They weren't just words. They were proof that this fight had been brewing long before Victor Grayson's SUVs rolled in. The town was changing fast. The Willow Creek Gazette ran daily updates on the HOA scandal, each headline sharper than the last. Grayson's fraud unravels. Developer ties exposed was a favorite, pinned to every coffee shop bulletin board. News crews had mostly left, chasing fresher stories, but a few reporters lingered, drawn to the town's grit. One wrote an op-ed called The Goat that broke the HOA, which Ellen found hilarious, though Rusty remained unimpressed. The church marquee now read, "Build bridges, not fences," and the diner started serving a Harper special, a plate of biscuits, gravy, and defiance. Ellen's family was settling into their new roles as local legends. Diane's law office, housed in a converted feed store, was already booked with clients, mostly folks fighting their own HOA battles. She'd framed the Gazette's trial coverage and hung a photo of herself mid-objection, her finger pointed like a spear. Tyler's YouTube channel, Drone Wars, was a hit, teaching small-town rebels how to outsmart surveillance tech. Nate's construction gigs were backed up for months, thanks to his reputation as the guy who'd face down a convoy with a mason jar of lemonade. Clara, ever the activist, had her knitting group stitching slogans like freedom over fences into sweaters for the winter market. Even Grandma Ruth had a following. After her parking lot jig went viral, she started teaching a weekly sassy seniors dance class at the community center. She still carried her megaphone, just in case the squirrels got uppity. Ellen marveled at them all, but she felt the pull of something quieter. The mayor's offer of a council seat lingered in her mind, tempting but heavy. She wasn't ready to trade her porch swing for a podium. Not yet. The townsfolk were knitting themselves back together, too. Former HOA members, the ones who'd followed Victor out of fear or inertia, started showing up at Ellen's place. They didn't beg forgiveness, just offered quiet nods and casseroles. Mrs. Delaney, who'd once reported Ellen's overly vibrant mailbox, brought a pecan pie and muttered, "Didn't know what he was really up to." Ellen accepted the pie and let it go. Willow Creek was too small to keep score forever. But the victory wasn't spotless. Victor's fraud investigation was grinding forward, with rumors he'd fled to a condo in Vail while his lawyers stalled. The resort developers hadn't vanished either. They were just lying low, waiting for a new angle. Ellen knew they'd be back, maybe with a smoother talker than Victor. She kept Diane's number on speed dial and Tyler's drone jammer humming. One afternoon, as Ellen was repainting the shed, a familiar figure appeared at the edge of the yard. Mark, the reporter. He'd been a quiet presence since the trial, his notebook always in hand, his photos capturing Willow Creek's soul in ways that made Ellen see it anew. He carried a thermos and 2 mugs. "Chamomile again?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "Figured you're immune to my charms by now," he said, pouring her a cup. They sat on the porch, the silence easy. He'd been working on his book, weaving the Harper fight into a bigger story about small towns standing up to greed. "Got a title yet?" she asked. "Maybe Roots and Rebellion," he said. "Too corny." She smiled. "Fits." He asked about her plans, not as a reporter, but as someone who'd seen her at her rawest. She shrugged. "Fix the shed. Read Dad's letters again. Maybe say yes to the council if I'm feeling brave." He nodded, like he got it, and when he left, his hand brushed her shoulder, just enough to make her wonder. The real shift came at the next town meeting, not in the council chamber, but in the park. Ellen had helped organize a Reclaim Willow Creek festival, less a victory lap than a chance to rebuild what the HOA had fractured. The park was alive with grills, fiddlers, and kids chasing Rusty, who'd been crowned honorary mayor with a ribbon around his neck. Clara's knitting group sold scarves, Tyler ran a drone-flying demo, and Diane handed out free legal advice with her coffee. Even Vera Holt showed up, eating a taco and laughing, a sight Ellen never thought she'd see. Midway through, a group of teens approached Ellen, holding a petition. They wanted to rename the park Harper Haven in honor of her dad. Ellen's throat tightened. "He'd hate the fuss," she said, "but I'll sign." The petition passed by nightfall, and the crowd cheered as a temporary sign went up. Ellen stood back, watching the town dance and eat under string lights, and felt something settle in her chest. This was what her dad had fought for, not just dirt but people. The festival wasn't all joy. A few old HOA loyalists grumbled in the corners, insisting Victor had been misunderstood. One, a retired banker named Hal, cornered Ellen by the lemonade stand. "You think you saved the town, but you've scared off progress. Resorts bring jobs." Ellen kept her cool. "Jobs for who?" "Not us. They'd bulldoze our homes for a golf course." Hal huffed off, but his words stung. Ellen knew not everyone saw her as the hero. Some wanted the shiny future Victor had dangled, even if it came at a cost. That night, as the festival wound down, Ellen found herself by the creek, the water cold against her feet. Mark joined her, no notebook this time. "You okay?" he asked. "Mostly," she said. "Just thinking about what's next. We won, but it's not like the world stopped spinning." He nodded, and they sat there, the creek's murmur blending with the distant fiddle. It wasn't a moment for promises, but it was enough. The next morning, Ellen woke to a new challenge. A letter from a Denver law firm, representing an unnamed client, hinted at a revised development plan for Willow Creek. It was polite, vague, and chilling. Diane read it and cursed. "They're testing the waters. Probably the same developers, hiding behind a new name." Ellen felt the old fire flare, but this time, she wasn't alone. The town was awake, and the Harpers were ready. They called a family meeting, not around a fire pit, but at the diner, over pancakes and bottomless coffee. Diane laid out a plan. Dig into the new firm, rally the council, and keep the town vigilant. Tyler offered to hack their emails. Ellen shot that down, but not without a laugh. Nate suggested a town watch, like a neighborhood patrol, but with more chili. Clara wanted to bake warning pies for any lawyer who showed up. Grandma Ruth just polished her megaphone. Ellen listened, her dad's letter echoing in her mind. Roots don't move. They grow deeper. She stood, raising her coffee mug. "We beat Victor. We'll beat this, too. Not because we're loud, but because we're right." The family cheered, and the diner's other patrons joined in, clinking forks and glasses. Willow Creek wasn't just a town anymore. It was a fortress. The air in Willow Creek carried a new edge as summer faded into fall, the hills turning a patchwork of amber and rust. Ellen Harper stood on her cabin's porch, a mug of coffee warming her hands, watching the morning mist dissolve under the sun. Rusty the goat, his paper crown long gone, but his swagger intact, nibbled at a patch of clover near the steps. The town had settled into a cautious peace since the trial, but the letter from the Denver law firm lingered like a storm cloud on the horizon. Ellen knew the fight wasn't over. Greed didn't quit, and neither did the Harpers. The Willow Creek Gazette had picked up the story, running a front-page piece titled "New Threat Looms" over Harper Haven. The article didn't name the developers, but hinted at ties to Victor Grayson's old network. Townsfolk clipped it to their fridges, a reminder to stay sharp. Ellen's porch became a makeshift war room, with Diane spreading legal pads across the swing, Tyler tinkering with his drone jammer, and Clara baking pies that smelled suspiciously like her tactical brownies. Nate patrolled the property line, claiming he was scouting for sneaky lawyers, though Ellen suspected he just liked the excuse to drive his truck through the mud. The family's first move was to dig into the law firm, Grayson & Associates. No relation to Victor, they claimed, but Diane wasn't buying it. She spent hours at her feed store office, cross-referencing public records and calling old law school contacts. By week's end, she had a lead. The firm represented a shell company, Blue Ridge Ventures, which owned land adjacent to Ellen's. The same land Victor had tried to buy. "They're circling," Diane said, slamming a folder on the dining table. "Same game, new players." Ellen nodded, her jaw tight. "Then we hit harder." The town rallied with a speed that surprised even her. The reclaimed Willow Creek Festival had forged bonds stronger than any HOA contract. The diners started a Harper Fund, collecting tips to cover legal fees. The librarian, a mess. Corey dug up 1920s land deeds that bolstered the cabin's sovereign status. Even Vera Holt, the once stony councilwoman, offered to chair a new oversight committee to block shady permits. "I'm not here for hugs," Vera said, handing Ellen a stack of bylaws. "I'm here because no one's paving my town." Ellen's biggest weapon, though, was the community itself. She organized a town hall, not in the beige council chamber, but in the newly named Harper Haven Park. The turnout was staggering. Families, retirees, even the teens who'd started the petition. They sat on blankets and folding chairs, eating Clara's pies and listening as Diane laid out the threat. Ellen took the mic last, her voice steady. "This isn't just about my cabin. It's about who we are. They want our land, our history. We say no. Not today, not ever." The crowd roared, and the Gazette caught it on video, the clip spreading online with hashtag HarperHaven trending. Tyler's Drone Wars channel posted a tutorial on spotting corporate surveillance, racking up views from as far as Montana. Nate's Town Watch grew, with volunteers patrolling in pickups and golf carts, armed with flashlights and thermos of coffee. Grandma Ruth led a sassy seniors march, megaphone blaring, demanding transparency from the council. Rusty, ever the star, trotted alongside, his ribbon now a permanent accessory. But the developers weren't idle. Blue Ridge Ventures sent a slick representative, Paul Mercer, to a council meeting. He wore a smile like a used car salesman and pitched a community-friendly resort plan, jobs, a rec center, even a goat sanctuary for Rusty. The crowd booed, but a few faces wavered, especially Hal, the banker who'd clashed with Ellen before. "Jobs matter," he muttered later at the diner. "You can't eat history." Ellen overheard and felt a pang. Not everyone was on her side, and that fracture could grow. She countered with a bold move, a public records request for every transaction tied to Blue Ridge Ventures. Diane filed it, and Tyler, with questionable but effective tech skills, borrowed data from a poorly secured server. They found what they needed, a paper trail linking Blue Ridge to Victor's old shell company. The Gazette broke the story. Developer deception uncovered. The town erupted, and Paul Mercer's next visit was met with a crowd chanting, "No sellout." Rusty, in a moment of perfect chaos, chewed through Mercer's briefcase strap on live TV. The council, under pressure, voted unanimously to reject Blue Ridge's permits, citing the cabin's historical status and public opposition. Vera Holt delivered the final blow, reading a 1936 ordinance that barred corporate land grabs on sovereign parcels. Ellen watched from the back, her chest tight with pride. But she knew this win, like the last, came with a cost. Hal and a few others left the meeting grumbling, and rumors swirled of a pro-development petition. Willow Creek was united, but not unanimous. Ellen found solace in her dad's letters, rereading them by the creek. One line stuck: "When you're tired, remember the land waits. It's patient. Be patient, too." She was tired, bone deep, soul heavy tired, but she wasn't done. Mark, the reporter, noticed. He'd stuck around, his book now in rough draft. One evening, he found her on the porch, Rusty dozing nearby. "You look like you're carrying the whole town," he said, offering a mug of tea. "Feels like it," she admitted. "But it's mine to carry." He sat beside her, the silence comfortable. "Book's almost done. You're the heart of it, you know." She shrugged, but his words warmed her. When he left, his hand lingered on hers, a quiet question. She didn't pull away. The final battle came unexpectedly. Blue Ridge, cornered, filed a lawsuit, claiming the council's rejection violated state commerce laws. Diane called it a Hail Mary, but it meant another court date. Ellen braced for a repeat of the HOA trial, but this time the town was ready. The courthouse was packed again, with lawn chairs, thermoses, and new T-shirts. Harper Haven forever. Judge Tate, back from his fishing dreams, sighed at the chaos. Diane led the defense, armed with a 1936 map, public records, and a new ally, Laura Grayson, Victor's ex-wife, who'd moved to Willow Creek and joined the fight. Laura testified about Victor's developer network, tying Blue Ridge to his fraud. The crowd cheered, and even Judge Tate cracked a smile. Ellen spoke last, not as a lawyer, but as a daughter. "This land isn't just mine," she said. "It's ours. It's the stories we tell, the fights we win together. Let's stay ours." The verdict was swift. Blue Ridge's claim was dismissed. The cabin's sovereign status was upheld, and the council's decision stood. The town exploded in celebration, spilling into Harper Haven Park. Grills fired up, fiddlers played, and Rusty pranced like he'd won the case himself. Blue Ridge vanished. Their shell company dissolved under legal scrutiny. Victor, still dodging fraud charges, was a fading name. Ellen stood on the park's edge, watching kids chase fireflies and Nate arm wrestle Tyler. Diane was planning a legal aid clinic for small towns. Clara's knitting group was stitching a Harper Haven quilt. Grandma Ruth, megaphone retired, taught dance moves to Vera Holt. Mark approached, his book manuscript in hand. "First copy's yours," he said. "Maybe we celebrate with something stronger than tea?" She laughed. "Deal." The cabin stood as it always had, scratched, stubborn, alive. Ellen sat on the porch swing that night, her dad's final letter in her lap. "Go sit on that swing and let the world spin without you for a while." She did, Rusty at her feet, the creek murmuring. Willow Creek was safe, not just from developers, but from forgetting itself. The future was uncertain, but Ellen faced it with grit, grace, and a goat. The fight had sparked debates that lingered. Some, like Hal, argued progress was worth the cost, that resorts could coexist with history. Others saw Ellen's stand as a rejection of corporate overreach, a defense of roots over profit. The Gazette ran letters to the editor, some praising Ellen, others warning of stagnation. The diner buzzed with arguments, civil, mostly, but heated. Ellen didn't join in. She'd said her piece in court, on the land, in the town she'd saved. Willow Creek wasn't perfect, but it was home. And home, Ellen knew, was worth every scar. Thank you for joining the Harper family's fight in Willow Creek. This story isn't just about a cabin. It's about standing up to injustice, protecting what matters, and the messy human cost of rebellion. What do you think? Was Ellen's battle a triumph over greed, or did it risk stifling progress? How far would you go to defend your home, your history? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's hear your stand on violence, justice, and the fights that shape our lives. Your voice matters.